Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday service of Now Creations. It's always a joy to remind you that the most important energy of life is the one that is at the very center of your being. You, the beautiful soul spirit, connected to the God energy, and allowing that energy to express itself through you here today. Never doubt the importance of knowing who you are, that lovely, lovely presence of the divine, and may you express yourself accordingly today and every day. Also very happy to extend loving greetings to all of our mothers and to all of the people who continue to nurture us in life. If you're able to join us, be very happy to have you this evening for What is Light Body from 7 to 8:30. Let's begin. My dear friends, to say the least, we have had such a positive response to last week's teaching on an Ascension vocabulary, learning to reframe the old third-dimensional spiritual terms into a fifth-dimensional wording that clearly reflects the spiritual ascension that many of us are now experiencing. You might recall that we defined the first 3 of the 10 vocabulary words. The first one was the changing of the old third-dimensional term of forgiveness to the fifth-dimensional word of understanding, especially understanding that God loves each one of us unconditionally, but we must learn to love others in the same way, and especially to understand that it is hurting people that make hurtful comments. The second change was subtle, but one that was very, very important, concerning the words selfless and altruistic, changing those words to oneness, stressing not so much the selfless behavior, which is good in itself, but rather the oneness that connects all of us to each other. The third change was to eliminate the words sin and sinner from our vocabulary, and to bring in the new word simply of experiences. All of us are simply having experiences of our souls, and hopefully are no longer imposing or laboring under self-imposed nonsense onto others or to ourselves. So with this review in mind, we are now ready to move into our next list of words. And today we're going to take 2 new words or phrases that will be very helpful to us. Today's teaching, therefore, is entitled An Ascension Vocabulary, Part 2. The 4th word substitution, it's a big one. It's the changing of the word religious to the word spiritual. Let's be simple and yet clear in describing the differences and then addressing the 4 possibilities. To be religious is defined very simply as following the beliefs of one's religion and then following the practices that those particular beliefs embrace. The beliefs can be anything such as believing in the existence of heaven after earthly life, to the practices of simply church attendance and the liturgical seasons of the year. To be spiritual, however, means primarily that one has a direct relationship to the God Spirit, and such efforts in direct relationship should be in our practices, so that we can bring together the individual and God without unnecessary rituals that have a tendency to cloud the situation. Now let's be clear. This contrast between being religious and being spiritual has a long history, the most notable of which are the two following examples. First, when the Buddha got so exasperated with so many of the Hindu rituals, he then began his own spiritual system based very simply on 4 noble truths. The second was the separation of Christianity from its Jewish roots, when Jesus too simplified so many of the customs of the Jewish heritage to simply encourage people to follow the 2 basic commandments: love God with your whole heart, mind, soul, and strength, and then to love your neighbor as yourself. Thus, it's not surprising that many of us are moving away from a religious orientation to much more of a spiritual embrace. Less and less old religious beliefs and practices, and more one's direct connection to the God Spirit. Such a movement can cause a lot of confusion in humanity, and especially within families. So let me now suggest the 4 following possibilities. First, can one be religious without being spiritual? Oh yes. And this is often seen in the moral righteousness of people that seem to have a religious background but are not very inclusive of oneness with others. We sometimes call them hypocrites. Secondly, can one be spiritual without being religious? Can one be spiritual without being religious? Oh yes. And this description is what many contemporary people are experiencing. The old religious beliefs and practices just don't work for them anymore. Many contemporary people are looking for something more, for something that satisfies them more deeply within, rather than simply fulfilling the external requirements of being in good standing with their religion. Many such people have become members of now creations and other spiritual groups who stress much more the inner path of one's direct relationship to the divine. Such people who are following the spiritual path no longer feel the need of an intermediary, although initially the movement away from religious institutions resulted in fear and guilt. Getting over this fear and guilt, which never felt right, was a big hurdle at first. But now so many who had these old religious views were understanding that it was simply part of an older, third-dimensional belief system that no longer makes any sense to them. Such sincere people are now walking a 5th-dimensional path that not only makes more logical sense, and not only does it feel right, but when put to the test, loving each other and loving God with our whole heart, soul, mind, and strength, yes, it delivers in concrete, practical terms. Such an important thing for us to maintain being spiritual, but not necessarily religious. We are now ready for the 3rd and 4th distinctions between being religious and being spiritual. The 3rd consideration: can one be both religious and spiritual? It's a good question. Yes, of course. One can be both religious and spiritual. And yet a comment is in order here. For many people who still had the feeling of fear and guilt, they continued their religious practices, although they were becoming more spiritual. After a while, the differences between religion and spirituality became clearer to them, and many former religious members became much more spiritual in practice. After a while, the gap was just too big, and one often felt rather hypocritical in attending religious functions that no longer seemed to speak to them. Yet, let's be clear, for whatever reason, yes, one can be both religious and spiritual, enjoying each for what they offer. The fourth consideration: can one be neither religious nor spiritual? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. While this consideration can take on many forms, there are two distinct groups. The first group, neither religious nor spiritual, is composed of those who just do not make any effort to understand life beyond their immediate life circumstance. These are usually baby souls who are pretty much overly dependent on what's going on outside of them and somewhat selfish within. But the second group often wants to make a change, but they are confused. They know what they don't want. They don't want the old religious stuff that just does not speak to them, yet they are confused as to what they really do want. They are somewhat lost, but yet are not ready to make a concerted effort to change. I suspect that you know many such people. Probably some of your family members and friends would fall into this group. They're confused. Thus, you will perform an incredibly important service for them by simply presenting a spiritual way to them, that they might look to your example, not in a preachy way that you would impose upon them, but simply being a very loving, kind soul that will enlighten them and perhaps encourage them to question what you have found. It is obvious that in now creations that we are very spiritual. We feel the importance of the direct path is the one to follow. While many of us have come from religious backgrounds and appreciate all of the things that we have learned, we now clearly realize the difference. We clearly realize the difference of where we have been and where we are heading with others of like mind and spirit, and so appreciative of our spiritual friends who are journeying with us. So much for being religious and spiritual. The fifth vocabulary change is quite significant for us. We will begin with a little background and then proceed to change the vocabulary. The background has two major pieces. You might want to take some notes here. Let's begin. First, there is the notion that there are many evil forces in the world, although I simply like to call them low energies. And they are usually grouped in this little threesome: the world, the flesh, and the devil. So let's look at this threesome of evil, the world, the flesh, and the devil, and offer a substitute. The first, let's look at the word, the world. Without a doubt, the world, or as we would call materialism, with all of its allurements, is a major source of low energy. Although there is nothing inherently wrong with the world, in fact, the difficulty is that, well, it's just people get lost in the world. Nothing wrong with the world, but people get so immersed in the world. There always just seems to be more and more to get, following this American dream or international dream. Or as we would sometimes say, many people think that you win the game when you get more toys, when you get more stuff. And then, of course, the game seems rather fruitless when you have to leave all of the stuff when you pass. Walt Whitman was pretty good with this when he said, the world is too much with us. Jesus was pretty good as well when he said, well, what profit is there to you if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul in the process? Yet we must clearly acknowledge that we are to bring heaven to earth. So it's tricky between not getting immersed in the world, not being mesmerized, and spiritually bringing heaven to earth without getting lost. Let's look at the word flesh. The word flesh is more than simply getting lost in physical pleasures, which we have all done at one time or another. Really what it means is getting lost not just in physical pleasures, but getting lost in selfishness, in self-centeredness. This sense of self-centeredness is difficult for many people to overcome. It's just so easy to say, me first, my family first, and quite frankly, not really caring about others. Oh yes, there are token gifts to charity, but for the most part, the low energy of self-centeredness blinds people to a sense of oneness, really in the sense of not caring about others and not using one's time, talents, and treasures in the pursuit of oneness. Combined with materialism, selfishness is quite a foe to overcome, especially when it results in those third lower dimensional energies of materialism and self-centeredness. And then, of course, you have that other lower third dimensional energy termed the devil. Let's now turn to it. While it is too complicated in this teaching to go into the history of the term devil and Satan, I feel comfortable to say two things. See if they speak to you. The first one, I don't believe that there is some kind of dark energy force that is trying to get you. I don't think that there is any low energy force that's trying to entrap you. I don't think that there is any low energy force in conflict with God and in conflict with you. I don't believe that. But I do believe the second thing. The second thing is that God has created each of us as a free soul. God has created each one of us as a free soul. And in the soul's freedom, we may choose to disregard the guidance of the God Spirit, which we have done on many occasions, and thus allow the world, and the flesh to take over. This is exactly what we did in playing the game of separation when we dimmed our inner light of the soul spirit to play the game of separation. In the process of dimming our inner light, our personality self, please listen carefully, our personality self became the dominant energy in our human beingness. And this is what happened. Again, listen carefully. The personality self became very susceptible to the lower energies of the world and the flesh. In its disregard of the soul spirit, the personality self simply got lost. I'll say that again. The personality self became very susceptible to the lower energies of the world and the flesh. And in its disregard of the soul spirit, the personality self simply got lost. In this lost lower energy state, the personality self developed what is often called the ego. By the ego, we mean very simply the failure of the personality self to consult with one's soul spirit and simply try to navigate on its own. The ego then became a projection of the low energy personality self. Let me say this again. The ego then became a projection of the low energy personality self. The ego was given a sense of identity, although in fact, the ego is not real. The ego is simply the limitation of the personality self state of mind that does not consult with the direction of the God Spirit that is within you. This is so important to understand. There is no ego. There is no devil. But there is the failure of your limited mind to follow the guidance of the Holy Spirit. There's no ego. There's no devil. That there is your limited human mind following the ways of the world and the flesh, rather than following the guidance of your soul spirit. We who are on the spiritual path have ended this game, although it's very clear that many people are still lost in the low energies of materialism, selfishness, and the ego, the world, the flesh, and the devil. Having completed the first piece of the problem of low energy, we're now ready to address the second piece, the solution. First, as we noted, comes the recognition. First, we know the recognition that our true identity is not the limited personality self. That's really the first step. You got to get out of the fact that you're a limited personality and understand that we really are a conscious, eternal soul spirit. First step. And not only in a sense have we created our own personality selves, but our soul spirit has been created in the image and likeness of God, from which we then can create our personality selves in the same loving presence that we created in the image and likeness of God can now create our personality selves in the same loving energy that comes from our God source. This is so important to understand. I'm going to suggest a little phrase to you that is extremely important. We, as soul spirits, have been created with the empowering gift of freedom. We, as soul spirits, have been created with the empowering gift of freedom, free choice. We need to understand better our gift of freedom. We need to understand better this gift of freedom. You'll notice that I use the descriptive word, empowering, in describing our freedom. Please understand the importance of the word empowering. As empowered freedom, understand that you, as an eternal soul spirit, were also empowered to play the game of separation, which we did. But here now is the real point. As empowered freedom, we are now ready to freely end the game of separation. And as empowered freedom, we are able to fully overcome all of the lower energies of the world and the flesh and the ego that we ourselves created. Please hear this deeply again. As empowered freedom, we are able to freely overcome all of the lower energies of the world, the flesh, and the ego devil that we ourselves created. I'm going to say it again. As empowered freedom, we as eternal soul spirits can overcome the lower energies of the world, the flesh, and the ego devil that we ourselves created. And this is precisely what we're doing in the following steps. First, we now clearly recognize that we are eternal soul spirits and have been created in the image and likeness of God. You got to start there, or you'll dip back into that old personality self that got you into all the trouble. Secondly, in our freedom, we have chosen to end the game of separation, and we are now realigning. We are reconnecting the personality self to our soul spirit, and reconnecting our soul spirit to the source. Reconnecting our personality self to our soul spirit, and reconnecting our soul spirit to our source. Third, we know how to do this. We're not lost, as much of the world is. We know how to do this. We are empowered, free souls. We are empowered, free souls. And we understand that we have 7 daily spiritual practices in now creations that empower our freedom to live accordingly. From getting out of bed in the morning to our daily meditation, so very, very powerful. And also through the course of the day, we have that go-to phrase, in that wisdom statement that rescues us from the lower energies of the world, the flesh, and the ego. Now, with all of this aforesaid, let me now give you the change from the third to the fifth dimensional vocabulary that we are ready to make. Rather than the world, the flesh, and the ego devil, rather than the world, the flesh, and the ego devil, we are ready to substitute this phrase: our aligned and empowered creative freedom. I'll say it again. Our aligned and empowered creative freedom. Our aligned and empowered creative freedom. There's nothing to fear. There's no evil lurking to get you. Rather, it's simply learning to use your aligned and creative, empowered freedom to create your reality. As always, we are creating everything because, well, this is the way we have been created. And we're now done with all of those lower third dimensional energies. We're ready to move forward in the fifth dimensional freedom of creating the good, the beautiful, and the holy from our aligned and empowered creative freedom. In conclusion, as you can readily see, the changes from a third to a fifth dimensional vocabulary necessitate a clear understanding of why we are doing so. These last two advances, from religious to spiritual, and from lower energies to the responsible use of one's empowered creative freedom, needed a good foundation of clear thinking. Please review today's teaching often. We will continue with fundamental understanding in our next 5 of 10 vocabulary changes. In the meantime, please realize that these changes of vocabulary begin with the change of how you understand yourself. No longer that limited human personality, but rather seeing ourselves as that eternal conscious God spirit in oneness with all others, moving to a loving community of spiritual souls who are advancing together and assisting all others in the process. Let me now bring you into meditation, and what a joy it is to do so. Just nice, easy breathing. Just breathing in, breathing out. When you hear the truth, you know it. When you hear the truth, you know it. As a species, we have progressed. And as an individual, we have progressed. Just important not to get caught in the past. It's important not to keep on doing practices that really are not quite meaningful to you because, well, you've always done them. And quite frankly, you're not quite sure what can be substituted for them. It's always easy to know what you don't want, what doesn't speak anymore. But you have to put in the time. You have to do the practices. That will engage you in a contemporary spirituality that will not just fulfill you, but will challenge you to growth. Once a week is not enough. Now you may be saying to yourself, well, I'm not caught in the whirl of the flesh or the ego devil. The best way to answer that question is, where are your priorities? You can fool everyone else, but you can't fool yourself. Just an important thing for you to ask yourself, am I too immersed in stuff? Not bad stuff, just low energy stuff. Doesn't really matter if you do them or if you don't. or the flesh. And not just simple physical pleasures, but me first. I'm more interested in, well, me, rather than you. This can be tricky. This is not an easy thing. This is not kindergarten stuff. We're talking about oneness, your worldview. Okay, that's all the old stuff. But the real movement is, how you doing? How you doing in your willingness to expand spiritually, to really do the spiritual practices that call you to a spiritual path now, that you feel you're ready to travel. You kind of feel that phrase, in aligned, in empowered, creative freedom. Oh my. In aligned and empowered, creative freedom to bring goodness and love into life. Do you feel that you're ready? You can't just know what you don't want. You have to know what's available to you in aligned and empowered creative freedom to usher in the kingdom of God in your daily living and with others who are so inclined. Perhaps you need to get over your own spiritual individualism and realize that you are part of something much bigger, much bigger. You have to stop looking at things as a spiritual outsider and learn to move much more into the flow of a larger energy, becoming an insider. Now, not to worry, and don't go into any more guilt or shame or fear or any of that stuff. But perhaps you're just ready to, you know, I'm changing. I'm going to become an aligned and empowered creative freedom. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to become an aligned and empowered creative freedom. I'm going to love everyone. I'm going to start today by loving my mother, those present, those who have passed, and using the embrace of my maternal love to love everyone else as well. And in this good energy that you feel right now, let me invite you back to your breath. Just nice, easy, lovely breathing. Yes, indeed, I feel loved and I will be loving. I embrace the oneness. I'm a spiritual being, utilizing an aligned and empowered creative freedom. And with that, let me invite you to gently breathe your eyes open. Where you certainly can't be anything but happy and good and kind and loving. Step up. Step up. Here we go. I am an eternal being of light and love. Thus, only good can come to me, and only good can come from me. And we are eternal beings of light and love. Thus, only good can come to us, and only good can come from us. Namaste.